Of the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Morris Media Studios, MorrisMediaLive.com, or its affiliates. Listener discretion is advised.
The higher you build your barriers, the taller I become. The farther you take my rights away, the faster I will run. You can deny me, you can decide to turn your face away. No matter, 'cause there's something inside so strong. I know that I can make it, though you're doing me wrong, so wrong. You thought that my pride was gone. Oh no, something inside so strong. Inside so strong. The more you refuse to hear my voice, the louder I will sing. You hide behind walls of Jericho. Our lies will come tumbling. Deny my place and time. You squander wealth that's mine. My light will shine so brightly it will blind you. 'Cause there's something inside so strong, so strong. I know that I can make it, though you're doing me wrong, so wrong. You thought that my pride was gone. Something inside so strong. Oh, something inside so strong. Brothers and sisters, when they insist we're just not good enough, when we know better, just look them in the eyes and say, we're gonna do it anyway. Gonna do it anyway. Something inside so strong. And I know that I can make it, though you're doing me wrong, so wrong. You thought that my pride was gone. Oh no. Something inside so strong. Oh, something inside so strong.
Beloved, greetings to you. This is Faith Without Borders. I'm your host, Pastor Calvin Sauls. It is a joy to welcome you on this day, August the 30th, to our experience together. As always, Faith Without Borders is an opportunity for us to create a place and platform to see how we can have thought-provoking conversations and solutions-oriented dialogue around the critical issues facing us right here in Los Angeles, in the United States of America, and around the world especially for me, South Africa, which is the land of my birth. And so as we always think through and discern and prepare for these experiences, it finds me, or it brings me, if you will, to the intersection between South Los Angeles and South Africa or South Johannesburg. Well, today is no different. As you know, here at Faith Without Borders, we are on a 10-week series. This is part 3 of the 10-week series entitled Intersectional Convergence, Organizing and Mobilizing for Inclusivity, Equality, and Equity. And we are looking at this theme from a local, national, and global perspective to see where are the places of convergence, where are opportunities for intersectionality, given the challenges that we are facing around the world as it relates to inequality, as it relates to exclusion, and as it relates to inequity. And we find this going on, right here in Los Angeles, in California, in the United States, and indeed around the world. And so that's what we're going to be getting into today. But before we do that, August the 30th is always a special time for me and my family because it is the day of my parents' marriage. As you know, Jan and Annie Sauls went to be with the Lord last year, and we sorely miss them. But I can tell you, it doesn't matter where I am regionally or physically, I feel their presence with me on a daily basis. And today was their union, and they have joined the ancestral cloud of witnesses, and we celebrate them, we think about them. I give God thanks and praise for them every day. Because of today and their union, I'm here. And so it is indeed a joy, even though we were born in the evil system of apartheid. We experience a love, support, and affirmation from both of them, and so grateful that today I can honor them, give God thanks and praise for them, as they continue to watch over us, because they right now have that aerial view. So, happy anniversary, Omiyan and Antukalu. There we go. As you can see, I'm wearing this is my Elders cap today. That is my hometown. And right now, my hometown is going through an extraordinary time of violence and unrest. And that is because of what happened this past week, I believe specifically on Thursday, when a young man, Nathaniel Julius, a 16-year-old special needs young man, was gunned down by police in broad daylight. He was unarmed, gunned down in broad daylight in my township of El Dorado Park, south of Johannesburg. And of course, as you know, here in Los Angeles, we continue to deal, with the challenges of unarmed, black men being gunned down by the police, not just in Los Angeles, but right now in Pasadena, as well as in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Of course, we want to remember all of, the others. And I want to especially lift up Breonna Taylor in Kentucky. No one has been arrested in her murder by police. And so this is an intersectional challenge around how the culture of law enforcement, which in so many ways for us in the United States, has become an extension of that slave-catching culture that goes back to 1619, when the first enslaved Africans arrived, in this yet-to-be United States of America. Of course, in South Africa, police culture has been infected with and affected by the system and scheme of apartheid. A system, a scheme, a ideology, and theology connected with white supremacy. That's what we're experiencing in the United States right now, around the devaluing of the lives of black people and people of color. There's the connection, there's the bridge, there's the intersection. And so we're going to be tackling this, today very, very, directly with some of the leaders from El Dorado Park, some friends, some colleagues who've been at the forefront of what's going on, in my hometown. But let me start off while we show some images of Nathaniel Julius. We say his name because his life matters. Let me read this tribute as we share these images. My name is Nathaniel Julius, and I was from El Dorado Park, Johannesburg. I was born with Down syndrome. I was just 16 years old when I was brutally shot and killed by police in South Africa. I was standing by a truck with my friends and eating biscuits, minding my own business, when a police van pulled up. The police sirens already startled me. One of the policemen then asked me, "What are you doing?" But due to my condition, I was anxious and could not speak clearly to answer the policeman. And the next moment, all I could feel was cold metal bullets piercing through my tiny body. I never saw it coming. I didn't have a chance to protect myself. After I was shot, the policeman threw me in the back of a police van, just like they did with Freddie Gray. You remember that in Baltimore. Throw me in the back of a police van like trash and dropped my body off at the Baragwanath Hospital, also now known as the Chris Hani Hospital. He just left my lifeless body there. Meanwhile, as my mother and my family were searching for me after hearing gunshots in the community, another police officer went back to the scene of the crime where I was shot, and she proceeded to pick up empty bullet casings. She picked it up from the floor that was covered in blood where I lay dying just moments earlier and put it in her pocket. She tampered with a crime scene and removed evidence. Boy, that sounds so familiar. The same police are now claiming that I was killed in an act of gang violence and shot in a crossfire. But they are witnesses who heard and saw the policeman shoot me in cold blood for no reason. They are now trying to cover their tracks. Yes, that is what police culture is all about, even in the Republic of South Africa. I was a gentle soul who always wanted to see people smile. I was a colored boy. I was not a violent person. I was not a gangster. I was not carrying any weapons. I was somebody's child. My mother's heart is shattered to pieces. I cannot speak for myself. I cannot defend myself, but you can. When George Floyd died at the hands of police brutality, many South Africans supported the movement for justice. Many South Africans is in support of Black Lives Matter. And so the question now is, will we do the same? Yes, we will. Will you stand with us and stand up for me? Will you share my story? Nathaniel, we will share your story. We say your name, Nathaniel Julius. Hashtag justice for Nathaniel. We say his name, Nathaniel Julius. Heartbreaking, very, very painful and challenging. This young man went to school in my neighborhood where I was raised. He went to the Don Matera School for the Mentally and the Physically Challenged. I know that school. More importantly, I know Don Matera. He was one of my mentors, and he's one of my heroes, poet laureate, freedom fighter, in the struggle against apartheid, the struggle for liberation. So here we find ourselves at the intersection of police violence and police brutality in South Los Angeles. We are experiencing on a daily basis what we call here post-traumatic community stress syndrome, because of underinvestment and over-policing. In El Dorado Park, South Africa, we are experiencing underinvesting and over-policing because of police violence and police brutality. This incident has many layers, just like police violence in the United States in general, but in particularly right here in Los Angeles has many layers. And at the root of it is supremacy in general, but in particularly white supremacy, discrimination, institutional racism, marginalization, underinvestment, inequality, inequity, and exclusion. We won't get to all of that today, but we're going to get to some of it in subsequent, shows that we're going to be doing. But for today, we wanted to focus on Nathaniel Julius. We wanted to honor him and spend some time to talk about him, and also, once again, this community of El Dorado Park being traumatized. And so we have with us, joining us is one of the faith leaders in El Dorado Park, Apostle Gary Lamont, who is the presiding prelate of the Jireh Ministries International. Good morning, good afternoon, Apostle. Are you there? Okay, let's see if we can get Apostle Gary Lamont on. We're going to work on that, trying to get him on as we share in this opportunity. Apostle Lamont, are you there?
I'm there. I can hear you.
There you are. There you are. Good afternoon. I know it's almost evening there. I'm just still trying to wake up here. So good to see you, my brother. Appreciate you, your ministry, of course, our friendship and our partnership. And again, here we are at such a challenging time and such a painful time once again. I know you have been, with other clergy leaders and pastors. You've been in ministry with this family during this difficult time. There have been several meetings, with you and our elected leaders there. I believe the Minister of Police, came out. There has been a huge march today. Can you just share with us, how is the family doing? And we also want to remember all of Nathaniel's fellow students or pupils, as we call them, in South Africa, at the Don Matera School for the Mentally and Physically Challenged, and their families who obviously have been traumatized by this experience. You have been in a pastoral care role. Let's start there, because I think it's important that we lift up the humanity of Nathaniel, the humanity of blacks in South Africa, undermined, the humanity of coloreds in South Africa, disrespected and demeaned in so many ways. So let's humanize Nathaniel. Can you just share with us, how you what you know about him, but also, your ministry right now with the family?
Well, thank you, Rev, man, and thank you for our friendship over the years, and thank you for allowing us to speak on this platform about the incident that happened with this young boy. Man, what a tragic situation it is. The loss of a innocent boy, the loss of someone that was not violent, the loss of someone that was loved by the community, hence the uproar and the uprising of the community. I had the opportunity, to visit the family on Friday as part of a delegation of the clergy, and just to go and encourage the family and also to pray for them. But what you hear coming from the family and what they say, what happened on that day, is horrendous. It is appalling, to say the least. This poor boy had nothing to do with any violence in the community, but yet he was mistaken, according to the police, for one of the gangs, and he's not a gangster. as a matter of fact, you just said it earlier on, is a Down syndrome child that cannot even speak properly. And that's the sad part of it. And I think when we look at his life, and we look at the situation in our community and even in South Africa, where the people, the law enforcement agencies that's supposed to protect us, rather kill us. They rather kill us, and they're supposed to protect us. And that's what happened with Nathaniel. And when I went to their house, I mean, your heart just breaks because of the situation at home and the family itself. I mean, these guys are innocent people, man. And we, what I heard also from our church that I heard from them is that this boy used to frequent our church, and he used to also come to our daycare center during the day, And when I heard that was even more painful to me. As part of the faith-based organization in our community, it was painful, but we pray that justice will be done. And I'm sure as we go along in this conversation, we'll get to hear more about what's happening and what happened. The counselor is on here as well, and I think Teddy's on as well, and they can speak from their perspective. But from the faith-based side, we are totally against what has been done to this boy and how the police is covering up the scene, how the police is covering up what they've done. And we thank God for you, Reverend, that open up this floor to let everybody know that Black lives matter in the States, in South Africa, and more so in El Dorado Park. Colored life matters.
Thank you, and we're going to get into that whole piece around colored lives matter, because I think folk beyond the borders of South Africa in so many ways don't understand that. A lot of coloreds consider themselves black. Why? Because they've been in the struggle. I mean, one example is Don Matera, who has been imprisoned, has fought, has worked with Nelson Mandela, has worked with so many of our other, freedom leaders, Reverend Dr. Alan Busak. So this it brings in the whole notion, about Steve Biko and what is Black consciousness and what does it mean, for us. So we'll get to that, at some point, because that's one of the layers, that stretched, of course, from what happened in. During apartheid, and how that has been carried in and carried through, into a democratic South Africa, especially, the disenfranchisement, if you will, marginalization, exclusion, of, the Khoi people, from the current dispensation, around, land reform and place in history, around that. So I think, that there's so much to feast on there, but there's also so much pain around that. So we'll get to that, in a few minutes. I want to welcome and bring, on for us, Councillor Peter Rafferty. He is the councillor representing, our elected and political establishment, in El Dorado Park. It's called Ward 7. It is El Dorado Park and Kliptown. These are the two townships where I was born and raised. And every time I go home and I take, friends, colleagues, and comrades with me, these are two mandatory stops that is on the itinerary. And it's as even though there are so many challenges that persist in these two communities, it is a source of pride and joy for me to go and trace the footsteps of where my mother gave birth to me, and where I spend all of my formative years from 1 through 22, 23, I believe, before coming to the United States. And so it's good to have the councillor with us. I know, councillor, you've been at the forefront, working with faith leaders, working with the community. We've seen the uprising, the unrest, and of course the destruction that we've experienced. I'm always reluctant to criticize the destruction. I am one who is about and for a nonviolent, direct resistance. However, many times when we see people respond, with destruction around what's happening, we fail to acknowledge the legislative and invisible violence, by way of discrimination, bigotry, marginalization, exclusion that's been done to people. Hence, Dr. King saying that riots and unrest, it is the voice of the unheard. And our folk in Eldorado Park has not been heard. And let's just be clear about that. And so we will, have to continue to work around how to get, a voice, for them as we do that. And that's why I've decided to do that. So, Councillor, can you give us just some thoughts, about what's going on, the meetings that you've had? Of course, we all want to know what happened to, the police, officers who've been engaged, in this, act of violence, as well as the act of, tampering with evidence. That's real out of a playbook of the Baltimore Police Department or the LA Police Department or the Kenosha Police Department. My gosh. Can you just give us, some update from your perspective, sir?
Good evening, Rev. Good evening to all the listeners. It's quite a sad situation that we're faced with now. But the case is now being dealt with by IPID, which is the police watchdog. So 2 of the police officers have subsequently been arrested. They're appearing in court tomorrow. So we will be going with the family to basically support the family during this time. But we will also see through this case so that we don't allow this particular case being swept under the carpet.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that update. Quite amazing to see that quick arrest there. It took a while for the officers in Kenosha, Wisconsin to be arrested. It took a while for the officers, in Minneapolis, Minnesota to be arrested. It always takes a while, in the United States. So we're glad, that IPID has stepped in, around that. Can you tell us a little bit about the role of the Human Rights Commission and what role would they play in this, so that we can make sure that this is being closely watched and followed so that indeed, justice for Nathaniel can be experienced?
Basically, the Human Rights Commission has come on board to assist us with all the people that has been detained. So they're dealing with that aspect. There's a lot of people who were shot, some with live ammunition. So all of that information we've managed to hand over to the Human Rights Commission. Also, the destruction to property. They went into the flats. You can't just shoot randomly through people's windows. You don't know if there's a baby on the bed or anything of that nature, but seemingly they did not care. And this is now what has flared up some of the tempers, because people also feel that anarchy creates a voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. What's the situation right now? I know the images that I received on Thursday from family and friends, quite disturbing, as people were just venting their frustration around this particular act. Can you give us a sense of, what the situation is right now? I know that this afternoon there was a huge march that took place. Can you tell us a little bit about that and just give us a report, on that?
No, sure. The situation right now, it's very calm. We've called on the community. For now, we need to support the family as they're going to their bereavement, allow them to grieve, because next week, Saturday, would be the funeral of Nathaniel. So we're supporting the family through the court process. But the situation is calm right now. Residents are very happy with the developments of this particular case. However, we have also handed over a memorandum to the Department of Community Safety indicating what we want to see. So that would mean that we need regular updates on this case to the family, to the community. But also, we want all the police officers at the Eldorado Park Police Station to basically go through drug testing so that we can sort of like mend the trust that has been broken um, during this particular time. But also there are other officers who are part and parcel who subsequently have not been charged as yet. So if they are not charged with the murder of Nathaniel, surely defeating the ends of justice should be one of the charges laid against those police officers. And they should be, in fact, one of the steps that they needed to take was to basically suspend all of those pending the investigation. And that would have shown community that this particular process is seen as serious and they are listened to, because that's part and parcel. Because it was like police are doing nothing, IPID is not doing anything. We had to wait for the MEC on Thursday from the morning right up until 6 o'clock. And that's basically how people feel that this is how we have been treated. Seemingly our lives don't matter.
Yeah. And again, you just saying that is just riveting. I mean, it just sends chills through me because of the work that we are doing here around humanizing, black people and continuing the fight against anti-blackness, around it. Can you say a little bit about the demands? I know, from some of the sources that I have on the ground that, there's a demand that, that we need some resolution around this within the next 6 months. That may have been one of them. But can you just tell us a little bit about some of the demands that that today, was handed over, to the law enforcement establishment?
Yeah. Basically, point number one was, as I said, indicated now, the updates, the regular updates on this case to the community and to the family. The second point was the drug testing that needs to take place. The third one was that a follow-up must be done with all outstanding cases similar to this one. There's also one to IPID where we're asking that they come and do awareness and tell people exactly what's the process when these type of things and what can they do to get assistance from IPID to make sure that none of these cases get swept under the carpet. But I think one of the biggest ones was also the release of Mr. Majid Abdul Amin, who was one of the guys that tried to basically calm the situation on Thursday so that we can basically deal and get answers from SAPS. Subsequently, he's been arrested on Friday on the pretense they called him to a meeting at the police station. When he got there, he was arrested. So that particular thing, the community also, it's one of the issues that came forward very strongly, that they demand the release of Majid Amin.
In the work that that we are doing right now, both as faith leaders with our grassroots, organizations such as Black Lives Matter and other, organizations, we are basically, working, unapologetically around 3 or 4 critical pieces. One is that, we demand that, law enforcement live up to the integrity of the oath that they've taken, and that is to protect and to serve. So far, it has been, there has been less protection, right, and more, destruction, less service, right, and more, senseless killings, around that. The second piece is in the area of transparency. That any democracy where law enforcement ought to function with integrity must have transparency, and so that's the second one. The third one, is accountability. Nobody is above the law, including law enforcement or the police. Absolutely nobody is above the law. And then, of course, there is this, a push to see, while we are resisting a culture of violence and marginalization, with, law enforcement and police, that we are talking about the reimagination, of, policing from a community perspective, right? And I don't know what the investment is, in policing, in El Dorado Park or South Africa. But let me just let you know, in Los Angeles, the budget for the Los Angeles Police Department is over $1.5 billion. I said billion, right? That's for one city. And of course, LA is the second largest city, in the United States. And so we're working on, just the moral bankruptcy that communicates, from leadership here. It seems to me as if there is a pattern in the South African police service in general, but also in this El Dorado Park police station in particular, around ongoing violations of that integrity, lack of transparency, and absolutely no accountability, for those who engage, in taking the law, into their own hands. Can you speak to that? I'm going to ask Apostle Lamont to also speak to that, because I think that's a question that must be asked, so that we don't get this notion that when we, talk about, police brutality, that it's, a white and black thing. It might be that for us here, but certainly there it's a whole different ball game. But the culture of policing in South Africa, given apartheid, and the culture of policing in the United States, given slavery and ongoing, institutional racism, there seems to be moved by the same glacier. Is there a pattern in the South African police service in general, in particularly this police station in El Dorado Park, of corruption, of lack of transparency, of police officers taking the law into their own hands?
I think definitely yes. This is what came up from all corners. And today's march was not only about El Dorado Park, because we had people from as far as Pretoria, Easterus, Rege Park, Toekomsrus. So the notion all over is the same. The lack of professionalism by our police officers or law enforcement officers is also something that leaves much to be desired. And that's where the trust relationship is completely broken at this point in time. So when you look at in cases of corruption, we see this on a daily basis, where police, they know who are the drug dealers, but the drug dealers never get arrested. Instead, they go there, drive by, get their monies from these drug dealers and move on as part of them just continuing and having business as usual.
Wow. Apostle Lamont, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, man, I will agree with the counselor. I mean, not so long ago, I had first-hand experience with the slackness of the police, the nonchalant attitudes that they have. Our people must stand in long queues and be treated inhumanely when they go to the police station. When you report a case, some of these guys look at you as if there's something wrong with you. Why are you coming to open a case of this nature? I am very disappointed in the MEC that was at the police station the other day, that instead of her dealing with the issue at hand, she dealt with another issue, saying people mustn't open cases and then withdraw the cases. That was totally uncalled for. She said it on air. It was televised. So the brutality within El Dorado Park and the integrity of our police force is questionable. That's one. Two, we dealt with a brigadier, which is the highest office within that police station, and in many instances, he's siding with his staff. He's siding with them instead of dealing with the issues at hand. Our people are treated with the utmost of disrespect and disregard for life. It's about time that our police system get overhauled, more so in El Dorado Park. like the councillor has alluded to earlier on, I mean, you can just imagine the form of corruption that goes on. In this very instance with Nathaniel, they still wanted to cover up the case. And like councillor said earlier on, they went and they tampered with a crime scene. And them being the law enforcement agencies, knowing they cannot tamper with the crime scene. Can I just say this to you, Ref, and to all our viewers and listeners, is that early hours of this morning, round about just after 12, there was a shooting at a house of one of my leaders in the church. A shooting. They got in there, they shot them. The one brother or her brother is in a serious condition in hospital. She's been shot at as well and not so serious. The police went in. They took a few of the cartridges, left the rest of them, and they didn't even take proper reports from the husband that was there. They just left. They were called at just after 12, 5 or 10 minutes after 12. They arrived 3 hours later. 3 hours later, they arrived. That's the kind of police that we have to deal with. And as a faith-based community and the organization that I represent, we cannot be silent about this. We cannot be silent. It was Moses that went and he spoke to a pharaoh, to an authority. It was Paul that went and he defied the Roman Empire. It was Peter that defied the order of the day. The church cannot be silent. The church must stop just having church. We must see to the issues and the ills of our community.
Yeah.
And they look to us. I mean, I can see the respect when we got to the house on Friday, today again, the respect that's given to faith-based organizations and to us as the clergy. It's been given to us, and we need to stand up and let the community know we should not just preach the gospel, but we should also stand up for all the atrocities and all this inhumane treatment that our people is getting, more so from the El Dorado Park police station. You know, as a matter of fact, I dealt with them 2 or 3 weeks ago. I dealt with them. I dealt with some of the colonels, and I don't want to mention names. I had to go and fight the case of someone. Go and fight it at the police station. It's 2.5 months. They did nothing with the case. I heard about people that was killed by policemen as well. Before this incident, nothing happened to the case. I have a family member whose son 2 years ago, if not longer, was shot by two policemen, two brothers. And nothing came of that case. Sweep it under the carpet, sweep it under the carpet. It's about time that we stand up as the community of El Dorado Park and let South Africa know that enough is enough. Good to see you, Dr. Augustus.
Certainly, Jeremiah 29 verse 7 is clear that as people of faith, we ought to seek the welfare of our communities where we've been sent in exile. And clearly, a lot of our folk feel like they are in exile, you know, in a new South Africa, where, as far as I'm concerned, there is a perversion of liberation going on, given the corruption, you know, that stems from the union buildings to the parliament buildings, you know, and right down in so many spaces and places. It is quite an embarrassment. And we know there was a webinar where the South African Council of Churches and several of our other, you know, ecumenical and interfaith leaders are taking this on in terms of being a prophetic voice, you know, that we've always been in South Africa. We may have been muted for some time, but as Bishop Desmond Tutu said not too long ago, watch out. Watch out. We will deal with you just like we dealt with the apartheid regime. And so that's what we want to say too. You know, the South African government in general, but particularly the South African police, you know, service around that. We as people of faith, we must be the headlight and not the tail light. This is not the time to be, you know, just, you know, mobilized by what I call the Good Samaritan syndrome, and that is we show up after the fact and pick up the victims. It is up to us right now in South Africa, in the United States, to write the second chapter of the Good Samaritan and have a disposition of prevention so that we can deal with what conditions need to be improved on the road to Jericho. That road to Jericho is Mopani Street. That road to Jericho is Central Avenue. That road to Jericho, you see, is, in so many places and spaces, around the world where people are experiencing, the pain, of the lack of investment and over-policing, discrimination, institutional racism that's taking place on these many roads to Jericho around there. So thank you for that. I want to invite Dr. Mary Augusta Adam with us. She is also right there on the ground. She is OBGYN at the Baragwanath Chris Hania Hospital. That's the hospital that Nathaniel's body was taken to. We want to, get to understand just the trauma that's being caused as a result of the disregard of Black lives, of colored lives, around this. Dr. Mary, can you give us just a medical perspective around, all of this, as you have talked with colleagues and as you've talked with family in El Dorado Park, but as you put on, your medical, hat around this. Your thoughts on all of this?
Evening, everybody, and good morning to you, Reverend Calvin. It's been a busy day. Thank you for waiting on for me. Councillor Rafferty, it's always a pleasure to meet you, always smiling. He always looks so young, when I see him, despite the challenges and that our community faces, and he holds them so well. And then also to the Apostle Gary Lamont in Eldos, they call him the Great Apostle. So it's good to see him here, and that's because he's a great leader in that community. And it's good to see you again. So I will give just a brief on that. I'm not the spokesperson of Baragwanath Hospital regarding this matter, and because of the extent of this, it's got legal implications as well. So I'll just keep it from a doctor's perspective. And as you mentioned, the trauma that can come from a situation like this, it's actually very painful, and it is very traumatic, because not only just as a child of El Dorado Park, these are the streets that we walked in. That area particularly is an area that we used going to high school, one that I used to use going to the swimming pool that's around that area. And just across from that, actually a friend of mine that used to go to the same high school, they own that tuck shop opposite the Hillbrow flat. So we often used to just go and support them there, especially when we were at high school. And then even post high school, we still go through to that area. So it's very traumatic to find ourselves in the situation where this is our daily lives, where we see this happening all the time. And when I worked at Helen Joseph Hospital, they often said that it was Westbury, the West Rand, that it's the colored people. You have to be worried about the colored people. So, and when a person was on duty, they would often say, no, this is your kind of night. This is your kind of people. You'll understand them, which is, it's heartbreaking, because that's not the case. Yes, you might see, predominantly, but that's because that's where the hospital is, and so that's what we face. That's the area that we work in. Now at Baragwanath, it caters for Soweto, El Dorado Park, Innerdale, as far as Orange Farm. So that's also a very broad and dynamic and diverse community. So we don't only see colored people. As a matter of fact, in my department, which is obstetrics and gynecology, you don't see that many colored people in this department. And that's because they make use of both public and private sector. But they would follow the channels of going to the district hospital, the local clinic, the district, and then even the regional hospital before they even come. So that speaks to also the level of health that's in our community. So our community is not doing too bad if they can access to the level of district healthcare. Now, speaking on this case where we have a young person that, or not even just a young person, a person that shot, the protocol here is that an ambulance is supposed to go up and actually assess the situation, pick up, and resuscitate on the scene first. And I want to start there with the ambulance system. And I think this is where we are flawed. We find that, and I've spoken to a couple of ambulance system services, and I've asked them, I've had many complaints that in Aldos, they don't see ambulance services, or number two, that there's often a delay for minimum 4 hours, maximum a whole day. So that's 24 hours that somebody can wait for an ambulance in El Dorado Park. And I asked, what is the challenge? What is the problem? And there seems to be a great fear of these ambulances coming into El Dorado Park. And I said, but what have they encountered that they have these challenges? And they cannot account for that. So it's as if they're afraid of gangs, they're afraid of being hijacked, they're afraid of, but if you look at what's happened in other communities, particularly like the Eastern Cape or even Pretoria, those things happen particularly in those areas. So as well. So I'm not sure when they say that, they're afraid to come into El Dorado Park, are they being justified? Because this has an implication on the health of a particular person. So that's the first thing that I wanted to address in this. Secondly, what was mentioned, it was alleged that the police had actually taken Nathaniel to the hospital, and then the words that came across was that they had dropped him off, that they had dumped him there, and they had mentioned that this is a gang violence. Now, for any doctor who gets to see a young person that's shot, firstly, you traumatized yourself because you just think this is a young person, number one. You think that, this person's future, you have to try your level best. You try your level best with everybody, but certainly you want to give it your all. The third thing is that now when you put the stigma that this person is coming from El Dorado Park, this is a gang-related violence, then in your mind you start thinking, oh man, how much effort must I put in? It's not an ethical thing. It's not, but that's sort of some of the running thoughts that one might have in their mind to say, this person, do they deserve to live if they're involved in crime? Do they deserve for me to put in my all? If they are going to, I heal them and then they're going to go out and hurt somebody. These are some of the things that you hear and you experience as you in the trauma room. But that's the dark side of it. But certainly the positive side is that we are under oath, and we are there to help our communities, irrespective of the race. But you find that it is a difficult situation.
Yeah. Thanks so much. I mean, the whole piece around this is how do we continue to organize so that we can humanize? We have too many schemes and systems in the United States and in South Africa that has facilitated the inhumanity of people. I mean, of course, apartheid was a paternalistic system. It wasn't, didn't go as far as a caste system. And we'll talk about that at some point because, Elizabeth Wilkinson has a new book out called Caste, right? That she connects with Michelle Alexander's book, where she, talks about, the prison industrial, complex here. Her book is called The New Jim Crow. The prison industrial complex is designed to create a caste system, in South Africa. But to get back in the United States, to get back to South Africa, apartheid was a paternalistic system, and so the worth of life was then designated, right? Of course, with whites at the top and blacks, at the bottom. So our initial piece is how do we organize to humanize, right? That's very, very important. And then also, how do we then engage in mobilization, against stigmatization based on the paternalism that's there. It reminds me of the words, from the sheriff, in one of the sheriffs in Wisconsin, that made, in fact, I think he's around Kenosha, where we have the current unrest. He made a statement, I think about a year or so ago, that some lives are not worth saving. This is in the United States that he made it come. And of course, we know what he means by some lives. It seems as if we're dealing with a similar situation, that's that's being facilitated, by, the current government in South Africa, and then also by the South African Police Service around this. We want to touch a little bit on that, around this whole piece, of colored identity around that. But we want to transition to that before I bring in Dr. Terry Matera, who will say a little bit about that. Let's listen to a song that just came out 24 hours ago, honoring, Nathaniel Julius. To that song. Let's put that image up again if we can, quickly. That's one I also received from folks. Stop killing our people. # Colored Lives Matter. Let me bring in Dr. Terry Matera.
This goes out to our people.
Oh, let's go with the song. Let's give us a little break.
This goes out to our people from Yalos in memory of Nathaniel Julius. We light a candle.
God, I need you
to shine your light.
We're living in a
dark, cold world.
Shine upon us.
Your father's love.
Healing on us.
Our mother's love.
Everybody throw your hands up. Put your guns down. Love your neighbor. And not be filled with hatred. Cause together we are one. See, pray, let's keep our faith. Everybody light a candle. Everybody light a candle. See, pray, let's keep our faith. Everybody light a candle. Everybody light a candle.
Let your kingdom come. Let your will be done. Victory and salvation. Give us strength for our nation. Everybody throw your hands up. Put your guns down. Love your neighbor. And not be filled with hatred. Together we are one. Yeah.
See, pray, let's keep our faith. Everybody light a candle.
Yeah.
Everybody light a candle.
Candle, yeah.
See, pray, let's keep our faith. Everybody light a candle. Everybody light a candle. See, pray, let's keep our faith. Everybody light a candle. Light it up, everybody light a candle. Light it up, light it up. See, pray, let's keep our faith. Everybody light a candle. Light it up, everybody light a candle. Light it up, light it up.
That is certainly a powerful song. We're going to let Dr. Terry Matera into the Zoom room, so Felicia will do that for us. But as he comes on, as I mentioned at the top of our broadcast today, what's happening with Nathaniel is basically the tip of the iceberg. What happened with Nathaniel, there are so many layers around that. We can talk about, on the one hand, what happens to our children with special needs, both in South Africa and the United States, and we're going to touch on that with my brother from Oakland, Berkeley, the Bay Area, who's doing activism, around the fact that special needs, the lives of special needs children do matter, special needs individuals do matter. We can talk about it from that perspective. We will talk about it, of course, from what's happening around, police violence and not being held accountable for that. We can talk about it from that perspective. We can talk about it, from what's happening around the historic conditions in, El Dorado Park. But we can also talk about it, from this whole, invention, if you will, in South Africa around the colored, piece, and we all know the saying in the United States: if you're black, get to the back. If you're yellow, you're mellow. If you're brown, stick around, and if you're white, you're all right, around that. Well, all of that was codified, in law in South Africa. So it was not just an attitude. It wasn't just a notion that was out there. It was actually codified in the apartheid law. That was part of the racial categorization, in South Africa. And so, of course, during apartheid, that was a way to divide and conquer, and certainly, in the, current regime, that continues, to be challenged, especially, if you just try to reform what apartheid did. You can't do that. You have to abolish what apartheid, did, and look at South Africa, in terms of how it was even before, apartheid, around that. That's been the challenge around the indigenous people, in South Africa, called the Khoi and the San people, and all the controversy, around that. So that's the other conversation. But then you have this whole piece about, okay, who are the coloreds? Do they have an identity? Do they have a place? Don Matera, always puts it this way when he says, during apartheid, we were not, light enough, to be white. Now, in a democratic South Africa, we are not black enough, to be black. You see, in terms of that. This is a very sensitive piece, but here at Faith Without Borders, we just go and break it open because, as I always say, if it affects the lives of people, God is concerned about it. And so we want to check in with that. I hope that Dr. Teddy Matera, is, with us. Thank you for your patience. I know you've been trying to get in. I hope that you are in. You spend some time with the family of Nathaniel as well. So if you can first and foremost just tell us a little bit how the family is doing. I know some of the family members are at the police station right now, dealing with some paperwork, etc. Let's start with just a report on them, and then we want to just begin this conversation about the place of how has the place of coloreds being facilitated during apartheid and now within democracy. But how's the family doing, Dr. Matera? Welcome. Good to see you, my brother.
Thank you so much. I also wanted to say thank you to the people who are present on this platform today. I don't know is there a lot of echo on my voice?
No, you're doing good. We can hear you fine, sir.
Okay. And, to the Reverends, to Councillor Rafferty, to the beloved doctor who just gave a very chilling account of what is going on with the treatment of our people. I firstly want to extend our condolences from the Don Matera Legacy Foundation, but more particularly from Don Matera himself, who's asked me to really express the pain that he feels with the family. I encountered the grandfather of Nathaniel, who lives on the same street as I do. It was extremely painful for me to hear this wailing outside my house. And I drove him 2 days ago down to the police station with the family. I haven't encountered the entire family like the pastor has. My contact has been primarily with Uncle James. And to start off with, I think it is a situation that not even words can begin to address. I think it speaks to the prolonged isolation, marginalization, toxification of colored communities, so to speak. We consider ourselves as Black. I've always grown up with that identity and looked at it as a very particular political identity, because it stood and brought all people of color against the apartheid struggle. Today, that particular identity has been lost. It's been fragmented into a kind of mixed ingredient, is what colored people today are kind of looked at, and falsely so, because some of us know who we are, where we come from, who our forefathers and mothers are, who our ancestors are, deeply rooted and invested in that. I think that's the first port of call that I wanted to make. Secondly, Pastor Sauls, you and I spoke a little bit before this interview yesterday about how this kind of demarcation and the lack of political will by the government to address the serious nature of how these communities are being isolated. And I think for me, it begins to, that poison has started to seep in so far that our people are lacking in any real kind of identity for themselves in terms of how they are supposed to fit in to what is considered the South African identity. How can you begin to call yourself a nation that is filled with a multicultural identity when certain sectors of it are left out very purposefully? How can you begin to address the needs of school children when in fact their own people are not necessarily represented in how they're schooled? How do you begin to talk about having a sense of who you are when every time issues are raised around the concerns of the community, we are told we have to wait? Well, my question is, how long do you have to wait? What are we waiting for? When are the questions of Nathaniel Julius' death going to be answered so that it begins to create a new sense of an identity of belonging? For me, those are some of the pains that I think have bedeviled our communities. And I use that word bedeviled very purposefully in the presence of yourself, Pastor Sauls, and the other pastor present here, because there's a spiritual death that has taken place in our communities that has been caused by this isolation and marginalization. Yet at the same time, juxtaposed to that is the fact that we have people who still carry the light, who still show us that headlight, as you spoke so articulately about. And for me, I'm struggling, as a professional, as a person who comes from this community, who has achieved a sense of excellence in studies and commitment to this particular community. I can't claim to be a leader like Don Matera was, but what I can claim to be is to be a resident of Eldorado Park. And the struggle that people are facing here is becoming one that one cannot identify with anymore, because the marginalization is so gross that you cannot explain to people what they are connected to. I want to stop there because I would like to maybe wait and see and share what other people feel.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Dr. Matera. I really, really appreciate that. I am going to ask all of our panelists to weigh in on that because it has affected who we are and what we are about. Let me provide this prelude to that by saying that, apartheid was not just a political ideology. Apartheid was also a social ideology. Apartheid was also a spiritual theology. And apartheid was also a psychological strategy. And of course, I always say that I'm at the moment dealing with a post-apartheid stress syndrome, as we seek to recover just from the deliberate and deep compromise that apartheid has brought upon all of us. And one such a compromise, of one's humanity is one's identity. Identity crisis is not just an adolescent experience. Identity crisis is a political experience. It is a social experience. It is a psychological experience. It is indeed a spiritual experience. Because you see, when someone messes up your identity, they have now entered the door of messing up your ability and compromising that, right? Your capability and messing that up, right? The activity you will engage in based on how you understand your identity, right? And that could, lead you on a path that I call cruising for a bruising, right? And it can indeed undermine your destiny. And that's kind of where we are right now. The destiny of so many folk, in so many communities, being compromised, messed up, and messed over because of the challenge around identity rooted in this ideology of white supremacy called apartheid. And that's where we are. And we can talk about this vision of a non-racial South Africa, but if the marginalization and demarcation, as you say, Dr. Matera, continues, it certainly, will jeopardize this vision, hopefully a vision and not an illusion, of a rainbow nation. A rainbow normally comes up after the rain. Well, we need to understand that it is still raining on a lot of people in South Africa, and the rainbow hasn't appeared for them yet. Let me get some thoughts first from Councillor Rafferty around this whole piece, as well as Apostle Lamont, and then also Dr. Mary. Councillor Rafferty, your thoughts on what Dr. Matera just shared?
Yeah, no, indeed, it's something that affects us all. You don't have to look far. You look at the job situation in our community. That indicates to you. Look at the level of service we're receiving from our local clinics, and most departments. Go to any government department and just see what's happening. Colored people specifically, are left out of the equation. So in any government department, and the sad reality is, if you go to Department of Education, for instance, predominantly it is Limpopo. Just residents from Limpopo coming in. So poster advertised, you just see someone is here. The person gets, we have some people that can't even get a promotion just because they are colored. And then that's the sad part around it. And you see, because also when our kids go for interviews, I can just think about a few, maybe last year before last, we had some girls that went actually viral on Facebook that went to Cell C for interviews, and they were told they cannot come in because they are from Eldos. So, it's that stigma that's also like with the Nathaniel case, where we are perceived to be drug dealers, gangbangers, etc. But we are more than that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Apostle Lamont?
Yeah, man. I also have to add on to what the Dr. Teddy said. Firstly, we know who we are. We don't have an identity crisis. We know who we are as people of color. We know exactly who we are. We don't want people just to accept us and feel sorry for us, because we know who we are and we know where we're going to. It's just we're not afforded the opportunity to firstly express ourselves. And did I say this? If we have to bring a race card in, that colored people are talented. Mm-hmm. They are skillful people. The best cabinet makers, the best welders, and the best doctors come from the colored community. Mm-hmm. I must say that. It comes from our colored community. When you look at the universities, very few of our people are accepted at the universities. And it's not that our people don't want to go and study. They want to go and study. They're just not afforded the opportunity to go and study. Well, I'm a product of that. I never wanted to be a pastor in my life. I wanted to be like the doc. That's what I wanted to be. I wanted to work on people. I wanted to cut them. But where I am today is because of a system. My parents could not afford to send me to university, and there was a system that blocked me in the apartheid regime. I'm caught up in the same system today, the very same system, the system of reverse apartheid. Need I also to say that in Eldorado Park, there's been no development that's been taking place in our community for years and years and years. I don't know when last was a house built for our people in Elders Councillor. Not your responsibility though. But when last was a house built in Elders? There's been a piece of land earmarked for a hospital for the last 30 odd years. There's a piece of land that's earmarked for a hospital. Nothing is happening to that piece of land. Whenever our people are asking for housing, and whenever they want to go and cut out a piece of land to build their own little shack, they've been shot at by the police, they've been tear gassed. I'm not a racist. I'm very much not a racist. I'm just prejudiced. But I'm not a racist. Our people are being shot at where Freedom Park currently. Years ago, people had to go and demarcate a little place for themselves. And we were chased away, or people rather was chased away from a building at Freedom Park. And now Freedom Park is occupied by our fellow South Africans. It's occupied by them. Nothing has happened in Eldorado Park, and as a matter of fact, in most so-called colored communities. Nothing has happened for us. This government and the previous government, they are in it to win it for themselves. Nothing to do with the colored race. And I'm saying today, I don't like to be called a colored, but I'm saying today, we need to stand up as people of color and make our voices heard in the corridors of this government, whether they like it or not. Whether they like it, we need our voices to be heard. And I'm really saddened by the fact that we are not looked after. We are not given the opportunity to showcase who we are. We're not given that opportunity. And I pray that God will change this country and the hearts of the leadership of this country. If you just look at Reverend Sauls and everybody is part of this panel, if you just look at our universities, look at our medical profession, look at our law society, very few people of color are represented there. Does it mean that we don't want to be there? We want to be there. We are just not given the opportunity to go there. And I can tell you that the word that's going around is two things. Coloreds wants to get out of school, leave matric, and they want to go and work for some of the financial institutions. That's all they want to do. They want to, let me name them. They want to work for FNB, EPSA, and Standard Bank. That's what they say we want to do. And that's not what we want to do. That's the only thing given to us to do.
Yeah.
Given to us.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, we need to change, first of all, our own mindsets, who we are, and know that we are created with greatness on the inside of us. We are not losers. We are winners. We're not just winners, we're overcomers. We're not just overcomers, we're more than overcomers.
Absolutely. Indeed, I am proud to say that, my brother Tony is an attorney, and my mentee, Donnell Yankees is, she just finished her first semester with flying colors, as on the track to be an attorney. So you're right about that. It is all about opportunity, and our NGO in South Africa, One Love Trust, we've made a commitment, to facilitate scholarships, for students from El Dorado Park, to in this case, one of our United Methodist institutions, Africa University in Zimbabwe. And we've had 2 graduates from there. We have 2 now who are entering their final year at Africa University, and they will return to, the community, to serve. That's where they are every break, it is a requirement if you get a scholarship from us that you return to the community and serve. So you're right about that. It is about, the ceilings being placed on us, the limitations being placed on us. They did that to our parents, and now they're trying to do it, with the current generation. They try to do it with us, and it hasn't worked. It ain't gonna work, and we just have to be, clear about that. Dr. Mary, your thoughts? Or anyone else want to say something?
Can I just say this, Ref? Sorry. Mm-hmm. The last time I heard, maybe the councillor can shed more light on this. Mm-hmm. The last time I heard, the unemployment rate in El Dorado Park is about 60%. Mm-hmm. 60%.
Right.
That's alarming, man. That's alarming. Mm-hmm. And do our boys, do they want to sit on the corners? Do they want to break into houses? No, they don't want to do that. They don't want to do that. They feel hopeless within themselves. Mm-hmm. They cannot go out and sell themselves because the opportunities are not there for them. I'm saying it today with all due respect to our government. The opportunities for the people of color are not there. Mm-hmm. That's the honest truth. So our boys don't want to sit on the corner and smoke. They don't want to sit on the corner and steal. They want an opportunity to work.
Right.
60% of our people in Aldos, our community is what council, about 580,000, 590,000, and 60% of the working force is unemployed.
Yeah, that's certainly a recipe for disaster. That in itself is just a recipe for a disaster around that. We want to move to conclusion. We just started this. Dr. Mary, any thoughts from you around this, and maybe some thoughts around how you see next steps as we continue to seek justice for Nathaniel, but then also continue the work of seeing how we can facilitate beloved community in El Dorado Park and all other areas in South Africa experiencing marginalization, demarcation, discrimination, and all that.
Thanks for the opportunity. And just on this topic of just being a colored female, it's both a painful one and a heavy burden to bear. I'm a daughter of a motor mechanic, and my mom is she was a factory worker where they made plastic bottles. So we came from a family where, we didn't have much either. And my dad was also not afforded the opportunity to study, but he made do with his knowledge, like the apostle mentioned, that our people are very talented because he went into the motor industry and he learned the craft and became very successful. Even though he worked within a company, he became very successful, and then he taught others how to be a motor mechanic, if I can put it that way. And so that drive in my father to want to be an educated person, he basically instilled into myself and into my siblings for us to fight, for the right to access to education. I went to high school I went to Parkdale Primary, and I was schooled again at the Blue School, which is the high school just opposite the police station. Mm-hmm. And we got to see quite a number of things while even attending high school there. But I must say that I really only, and this is where I agree with Apostle, where he says, we know who we are because we grow up in our community and we're so united in our community, and we sort of have an understanding of who we are. But the minute you step outside of that comfort zone, that's when you realize that you are different. And that's when I got to realize I'm different, when I started applying to university. And already that journey in matric was very difficult because although I applied for everything higher grade, I still struggled. There was a point where one of my English marks was downscaled, and I had to then end up going to the Department of Education and sitting in front of a board that looked nothing like me. And I had to explain why my English was now standard grade and not higher grade, and why I wrote a higher grade paper and not a standard grade paper. And in that, it actually delayed me in going to Wits University at the time. But it gave me an opportunity to explore a an avenue again where I had to fight for myself. And I went to an interview at Boston City campus. And again, nobody looked like me. They were all fair-skinned. But when I went into that interview, because I spoke my mind, I made it a point to say that I'm here because they already started the semester. And they had made it they said to me, you know what, they don't think I'm going to make it. And I said, why? They said, no, we've already started. And that was their thing. I said, give me a chance. And when, by opening up the door for me, I proved to them, and that first semester, which they had already done 2 months of, and I came in the last couple of weeks, I still got a distinction in that. So they said to me, by doing that, we'll give you the rest of the year to continue your diploma. So I finished my diploma in sports medicine. And when I then my dad again sat me down and said, do you want to go into this medicine field? And I said, you know what? I'm not sure now. I feel demotivated. And then an opportunity came for me to go to Rand Afrikaans Universiteit. Now I don't speak very much Afrikaans. Although I grew up in Eldos, I grew up in an English home. So, and again, this is what's amazing about El Dorado Park is that even though I spoke English, my friends spoke Afrikaans, and we still blended. We were speaking English, Afrikaans, Jemmekaar, and everybody was still good. And we still learn from each other. And then from that experience, again, when I walked into Rao, I thought it was a colored university now because everybody looked like me at that time. Well, it was mixed, white and colored. And so again, we were able the opportunity to study, and a lot of the people, even from Eastern Cape, came to study there. So again, we had this culture and this community that we had. Then I pursued still medicine, but in my final year of nursing, again, I was faced with racism, where I went to Wits University and I said, I am ready. I want to come back to Wits. I wanted to study at Wits. And the first thing is, an old Tanny there said to me, I'm sorry, ma'am, you won't get in. I said, but you haven't even looked at my application. And I've done well doing sports medicine. I've done well in my nursing, graduating well. So what's the problem? She just said to me, she looked at me and just said, my dear, you're not going to get into it. Now, this is in 2004, because I started medicine in 2005. So you can imagine it's still very much real. And when I went to so I applied then again to other universities. At that time, I was able to do that. And I applied to UKZN as well. And I decided I wanted to then explore what else was outside of Gauteng and see what's happening. And I can tell you, again, when I went to UKZN, most people didn't look like me. The number of colored people that were there were very minimal. There were about, probably in our class, out of a class of 200, we were probably about 15. Mm-hmm. And from that experience, what I got to learn, I decided that when I say that it's a burden to bear, I decided I'm going to get involved in leadership structures like the church organization, the ANC, find out what is going on here. And so through the church organization, the Christian Medical School organization, I then became part of the SRC. Mm-hmm. And then from that platform, I got to understand, again, I was the only colored in that platform. And I got to discover that, like the apostle is mentioning, is that the universities actually only allow for about 1% for colored people to come into the system. Now, what is 1% in our population, or that demographic, that area? So that was my understanding at the time. That was in 2006, 2007. And so we tried to look at how we could actually change this demographic. So for me, I was fortunate because I already had, I had a couple of things in my favor. One is that I had a background in nursing. Two, I had my age. And three, I had... I was part of the 1%. So that allowed me to get into the program quite easily. So I had to find ways of how can I highlight this issue at those platforms at the university, that it can be more balanced, that it wasn't just afforded to the Indian population and then also to the Black population. How can they incorporate? Because there's quite a number of, colored community is quite predominant as well in UKZN.
Right.
So we needed to look at that. So again, when I said it's painful as a woman, a colored woman, that perception that we are easy, that we're supposed to have a certain number of children behind that are strolling behind us. So when you're sitting in some of the platforms, I remember one incident where one of the counselors in the university actually came to me and said, you know what, would you like to go out for lunch? And not for lunch, the code thing was, I think we should have tea. And I said, tea at this time of the day? The good thing is I didn't like tea very much. So, and me, I'm fazed by these things because I'm such an academic, I'm such a bookworm that I missed it. And when I was relaying this story, somebody had said to me, this is what tea means. And so it's not a nice environment to find oneself.
Yeah.
And now coming back into being a postgraduate student, well, I did eventually make it to WITS. Yes.
All right.
As
now.
a postgraduate
Yeah.
student. Yes.
Yeah.
So I said to them, I'm getting there. And so again, you find a lot of challenges because, again, when I find myself in my department, I'm one of 5 females in our department. There's no male doctor currently that's colored. So again, that perception is there that we're not there. Yeah. And so we need to represent. And so I try my best to represent our community because I'm a child of Eldorado Park very well. Yeah. So moving forward,
you're doing an excellent job representing us. Let me just say that. So we're proud of you. We're grateful. And I feel your pain. I mean, when you talk about just the pain of being rendered invisible, the pain of being, rendered, as lower than, that's real. Yeah. And it's happening. Real. It's happening in so many different ways, in so many different places. Certainly, being different is not, because of any deficiencies, right? I think one needs to mention that, and as far as I'm concerned, as one who, live and learn at the intersection, diversity is a manifestation of divine integrity, right? Yes. So lack of diversity, we allow ourselves to miss out, on the diversity and the beauty that God has for us to experience. I want to, I have a tribute I want to do, for Nathaniel as we come to a close here. But I wanted to, just say, Teddy, you've heard all of us now talk about, what you so, eloquently and powerfully framed for us. And I know we've talked about doing some more, having some more conversations about this because it is like, people whisper about it. And when it's ever brought up, it's brought up in a very, very exploitive, way, especially politically by some of our elected leaders. But we will delve deep into this because colorism, just like in the United States, colorism is real in South Africa. It may look different and work different, but it begs, it invites a deep dialogue, and courageous conversation around it. And we're going to get into it. And we'll dedicate some shows to that, and I know that you'll be available, for that. Teddy, any, brief final words from you? Okay, he may have some technical challenges around that, but let me thank so much. I
just wanted to say,
there you go. Go ahead, Teddy. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much to everyone. And I think, you've inspired me to begin to get myself together and perhaps start an academic and scholarly campaign also regarding this marginalization of our communities and the brutality that our communities suffer. I'm a filmmaker by profession.
Yes.
And so I'm thinking perhaps what we need to do is we need to look at how we could represent our communities in terms of that identity.
Yeah.
Thank you. I need to leave, unfortunately, but
yes.
I'm honored that you have included me. Pastor Sauls.
Listen, thanks
And I
so
wish you
much.
very
Thanks so
good
much, man. You know we love you. Say hi to Brazinga and give him our love. And also, please express our condolences from all of us here in Los Angeles, to the family of Nathaniel Julius, and we will continue to do whatever we can to leverage the platforms that we have to make this connection at this intersection for liberation.
Okay.
Yeah.
From south to south.
Yes,
We
sir.
love you.
That's the intersection, baby. Take care. Appreciate you, man. Much love.
I know.
Thank you so much, Councillor Rafferty. We'll certainly continue to be in touch. Thank you for the cap you gave me when I was home, some time ago. I'm glad I found the cap, and also, I have another Eldo's cap here, that I roll with. So yes, Eldo's all the way. Apostle Lamont, appreciate your prophetic work, your pastoral work, your preaching work that you were doing, as a faith-rooted organizer, in El Dorado Park. And I know that we are set up to do so much more, for our communities in South Los Angeles and in South Johannesburg, such as El Dorado Park. Please greet my Jaire family and give them our love. And just to know that I did talk with my brother Tony about the vandalism that you guys have experienced. We're praying for recovery and restoration for that, and that you have the support of One Love Trust, in doing so. Dr. Mary, my sister, appreciate you. Much love to you. Thank you for who you are and for what you do. I appreciate so much our friendship and our partnership. Celebrate your leadership as we continue to do what we need to do. We want to return back, of course, to Nathaniel Julius, his memory, the fact that his life matters. As a special needs young man, 16 years old, gunned down, by the South African police service, and I say service because there's a culture in that service that is parallel, to the culture in law enforcement here in the United States. So we must deal with it, delve deep in it, and we'll get to that. The trauma that's been caused now to this family, to the fellow students at the Don Matera School for the physically as well as mentally challenged and their families, this whole community in El Dorado Park, and indeed, South Africa, heaven has been traumatized, by this, and what happens, to all of our citizen brothers experiencing, death by way of violence and nothing being done about that. We pray for integrity, transparency, as well as accountability in this matter as we move, towards a more just and fair society. As we get that video ready, let me read an adaptation that I wrote to the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Riots and unrest are the real language of an unheard community. El Dorado Park is one of many such communities in the Republic of South Africa. This could be a sign of what awaits our beloved Mzansi. Let us now honor once again Nathaniel, and then I'll come back with some final thoughts.
Rest in peace, Nathaniel. And to my fellow South Africans, what have we done?
What have we done? What have we done?
policeman shot a child of cerebral palsy dead last night. They're 16 years old.
What have we done? What have we done? What have we done?
Hoop die hemel is so mooi soos wat hulle beskryf in die Bybel en dat ons mekaar weer sien. Rus en vrede, Nathaniel.
Riots and unrest are the real language of an unheard community. Eldorado Park is one of many such communities in the Republic of South Africa. This could be a sign of what awaits our beloved Mzansi. We are so grateful that you joined us today. We want to return to what's been going on in the United States right now by just sharing with you that coming up today is, from LA Commons, the celebration of Black love, or Black joy at least. That's going to take place today at 2 p.m. and looking forward to that celebration. It's part of the Day of Our Ancestors Festival of Masks. Please check it out at lacommons.org. There you see the website. Join the celebration in honor of our ancestors. Black joy as resistance. It's going to be a beautiful, awesome, bold, and powerful experience. Today I've had the privilege of serving on the planning team, and as part of this celebration, I will be honoring again the memory of Nathaniel Julius, and so grateful to our folk, at the Unarmed Park Art Walk as well as LA Commons for the work that they continue to do. Also, yesterday, the world was shocked, at the transition, of Chadwick Boseman. We all know him, from Black Panther. We all know him from playing powerful roles such as 42, the life of Jackie Robinson, playing the role, of James Brown, playing the role of Thurgood Marshall. The roles that Chadwick played reflected who he was and what he believed in. Gifted. We lost him at 43 years old to colon cancer. He, of course, is well known of being King T'Challa from Black Panther. I just joined so many around this community, so many around this country and around the world to share our condolences to the family and to everyone, because it is a community loss because of who he was. He was not just an actor, he was an activist. He was not just an artist, he was an artivist. He knew who he was, he understood his purpose and his mission that he was placed here for, and he lived into it and lived up to it valiantly and with so much pride and dignity. And we honor him and we celebrate him. We close today's show with some words from Chadwick Boseman. As always, he reminds us of the tumultuous and the perilous time that we find ourselves in the United States of America right now, as we make our way towards that election that's scheduled for November the 3rd. We are encouraging people, given the strategies of voter suppression that has been unleashed from the White House and so many other state houses, in this country, whether it's Florida or Georgia or Ohio or other places. Voter suppression is real. So we want to encourage folk to make sure that you are registered to vote by mail if you need to, in October. So with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, we are launching a campaign called October is Voting Month. Don't wait till November. Make sure you get it done in October. Register. And make sure that you do this. And also, we want to remind you that the end of September, is the final date to complete the census. Be in the count, get registered to vote, and make the fact that you are in the count counts by voting. Here is Brother Bozeman, King T'Challa. Here is Thurgood Marshall. Here is Jackie Robinson and James Brown by way of Chadwick, encouraging us to do the right thing for such a time as this. Thank you for joining us. Much love. The struggle continues.
Anything else you want to say from your heart?
All of that 70 million group of young people who will come out and vote. I believe in you. I think you can turn our nation around. You can make it live up to what it's supposed to do. It's not just that you're the future. You're actually the present. You're actually what we're supposed to be at this moment. And the fact that you have a voice, the fact that you can have a say, you know, you vote for whoever you want for, vote for what you believe in. But I believe that the majority of you can see what's actually happening and you want things to change. So I say all that to say, you know, thank you in advance for your input and the victory that is to come.
The higher you build your barriers, the taller I become. The farther you take my rights away, the faster I will run. You can deny me, you can decide to turn your face away. No matter, 'cause there's something inside so strong.